Hi, I'm Heidi with Go Stamping. Welcome to my craft corner. I am so excited that you are joining me today because I have 3 cards to share with you using the Peony Garden Designer Series paper. But I'm not using the whole suite of products. I've chosen a different stamp set and I'm using a little bit different colors. Some of you know that Pantone has recently announced their 2021 color of the year, and they've actually picked 2 colors this year, a gray and a yellow. And I've chosen 2 of Stampin' Up colors that I think match pretty well, Basic Gray and Daffodil Delight. And I have 3 cards to show you that use that color scheme. They're absolutely beautiful. This is going to be kind of a long video though. I hope you will stick with me all the way to the end because each card is different and each one has some special techniques and tips that I am going to share with you along the way. Before I get started, I wanted to make sure that you know that I have lots of other stuff going on in the Stampin' Up world. Lots of events and some fun things happening over in my Facebook group. So if you are not a member there, come on over and join me. The link is in the description of this video. Also, if you want to know everything that's going on and keep up to date with what I'm doing and what's going on with Stampin' Up, make sure that you subscribe to my weekly newsletter. And the link to that is in the description as well. So, besides that, all of the dimensions for today's projects, as well as the supply lists, are available on my website. And of course, the link to my website's in this video. If you like the video, like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. All right, Oni go, let's get stamping. So I have 3 cards to share with you today, and they all are going to use the Peony Garden Designer Series paper, which is absolutely gorgeous paper. It is all Basic Gray, Gray Granite, Whisper White, and then Petal Pink. Very, very beautiful paper. And if you look in your catalog, if you look at page 82 and 83 in your 2020-2021 annual catalog, you'll see there's an entire suite of Peony Garden products, right? There's a stamp set, there's these really cool dies, the paper, there's some gems and some vellum, and a 3D embossing folder, just, all sorts of really cool stuff. But sometimes I think we get so hung up in using the suite of products that we don't think about how the Designer Series paper could go with other stamp sets. So instead of using the Peony Garden suite, I'll put that aside, I am going to be using the Field of Flowers stamp set. And it's this stamp set, really cute stamp set, quick and easy to use. It does have a punch that will punch out these little flowers, but I'm not using that either. I'm just going to use the stamp set, and then I am using the Stitched So Sweetly dies. So these dies right here, the Stitched So Sweetly dies, which I absolutely love. If you haven't seen these before, they're just a really kind of like some frames, I don't know what you would call that, but like a frame edge, and then some different label shapes that nest together. So they're really fun to work with. All right, I'm going to set these aside and we will get started on the first project. I am going to be using this piece of Designer Series paper that just has these sketches of these peonies on it that are just in Basic Gray and White. Okay, so this piece of Designer Series paper is 4" by 3 3/4 inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm grabbing my Stampin' Blends. These are the Daffodil Delight Stampin' Blends, and I'm going to start with a dark one. What's really great about this paper is it kind of shows you where to color dark and where to color light. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a peony, and I'm going to color dark any place that there is sketchy lines. So you see these sketchy lines? I'm going to color those dark. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to color over all of those sketchy lines. Even if it looks weird at first, when you get done, this will look fabulous. So just coloring over all of those sketchy lines with the dark Daffodil Delight Stampin' Blend. And I'm using the thin tip for this part of it, so I can really get it right where I want it. And I'm not worrying that, it's not matching each individual line. I'm just coloring where the lines are. And color in there. And then it gets really shadowy in here, but that's fine. And I'm also going to do these centers. So it's kind of a poofy center. And I'm going to color that whole part in with the dark Daffodil Delight. And it's okay that I'm now going to color right next to that to go over the shaded lines, because the shaded lines add additional texture to it too that shows through the yellow. So once I have, oh, there's still some more down here. The hardest part of this, I find, is to make sure that you don't color the leaves. And I actually colored the leaves on some of them. And once you get it done, you don't notice that it's the leaves instead of the flowers. Then I'm using the light Daffodil Delight, and I'm using the wider tip end. With these wider tips on the Stampin' Blends, you see that they come to a really, really nice sharp point. You don't want to do your Stampin' Blend like this on this end, because it's going to damage that point and you're going to lose it very quickly, and then you're going to be very disappointed in how your Stampin' Blend colors. Instead, you really want to hold it very kind of sideways, and you just kind of use that point to get all the way to the edge. But then I like it because I can color big areas rather quickly. I'm just going to color over that whole flower with the light Daffodil Delight. And you can see how that colors that all in and looks super pretty. Now I'm not going to do the whole thing because it would just take too long. So I'm going to show you one that I already have finished. So here it is. And I'm just sticking with doing just the Daffodil Delight. So there's leaves on there. And this would look really pretty if you came in and you colored the leaves with a green color or a couple of green colors. But I like it with just the Daffodil Delight. I like the monochromatic feel to it. So that's what I'm going to use. And then I have, for my card base, I have a piece of basic gray. It is 8.5 by 5.5. And of course, all of these dimensions can be found on my website, and the address for that is in the description to this video. So you can go there and check it out. Then I have another piece of the designer series paper, and this is, let me double check, it is 5.5 by 4 inches. And I'm just going to use some green glue. I want to use kind of a light touch with the green glue, not too much. And I'm going to adhere this towards the top. I'm not going to do it all the way to the top. I'm just going to leave a tiny little edge up there. Then I'm going to adhere this lovely colored, which way do I want it to go? I think I want it to go this way. Piece of designer series paper with all these beautiful yellow flowers that I have colored. And that is going to go over here towards the left side and towards the bottom. So it kind of creates this offset piece. Make sure that's lined up. Then I've cut a couple shapes using those Stitch So Sweetly dies. One of them is basic gray and one of them is whisper white. And I'm going to stamp on this with the Always. There's a stamp in here that says Always. And I realized when I went to do this project that I still have a really, really, really old basic gray ink pad. So it is a felt ink pad, so it does take a little more of a heavy hand to really get it inked up. Plus it's a little bit dry. I apparently do not use basic gray enough. I'm trying to keep my head out of the shot, but I'm just going to stamp that Always right in there, and it just barely fits. So there's the Always. And then I want to stamp the little Believe, and we're going to stamp the Believe right up here. And I'm going to stamp that with the Daffodil Delight. So just a quick and easy Believe Always. Put my ink pads away. Then I want to adhere my stamped piece to that basic gray piece. just like that. And now I want to punch some holes in the end to thread some ribbon through. So what I like to do is I like to make a dot. And since this is such a dark gray, I'm going to use this Sharpie marker. And I'm just going to make a dot on each side where I want those holes to be. I forgot to get out my punch, so let me get that out. And then this is, it'll be on my website what this punch is. I never remember the name. It's Label Me Pretty or Label Me Fancy or Label Me something. So it has a hole in it that is perfect for the edge of here. So I just slide that through. And this is much easier when the paper is lighter. So you probably can't see that, but I line that right up where I put that little mark. It just helps me make sure. It's hard to see, you know, get these straight and everything. So just helps me a little bit. All right. With this, I want to use the crinkled seam binding. And I love this. It's white right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dark Daffodil Delight and I'm going to just color. And I know this is a little bit hard to see, and I'm going to end up with a little Daffodil Delight on my fingers, but that's okay. So I'm just going to color this all the way down, and I'm just holding it tight between my fingers. You could hold it tight on your paper too, but I find that gets a lot of the extra ink is going on the paper, and I'd rather just either keep it in my marker or get it on my ribbon. So color all the way down. So I have to figure out how much I need for this. And this, because it's an alcohol marker, it dries really, really fast. So I am getting some on my fingers, but not very much. And by the time it kind of gets past there, it's getting dry. All right, so let's see if this is gonna do it. So isn't that pretty? I love this technique. You can get any color you want with those, you know, that you have a Stampin' Blend in for your ribbon. So it's really nice way to make ribbon that will match your project. I'm just going to thread this through these holes. And then I'm going to put some Stampin' Dimensionals on the back of here. So very quickly, grab my that's not my Take Your Pick tool. I'm going to grab my Take Your Pick tool to do this. More and more I've been using my Take Your Pick tool for my dimensionals, just because I find it's a little bit easier, but it does take some practice. Just pull those backs off. Hopefully get those all in the trash where they belong. And then just going to line that up on the front and pull this through to the other side. Yeah, that should be good, I think. Well, you know what? I'm going to do just a little bit more, I think. Sometimes that happens. You get done and you're like, no, just need a little bit more ribbon. I'll cut the ends. And then I'm going to tie a bow. What I love about this crinkle seam binding, people keep asking me about tying bows and things. The crinkle seam binding is amazing for tying bows because it's not so stiff that it won't tie. But especially after you have colored it, the alcohol ink gives it just a little bit of extra stiffness. And so once you've colored it, it really is super easy to tie and it holds a really nice shape. there's the bow. But I decided the bow just wasn't even enough for this card. So I'm going to trim my edges, trim my ends, I should say. And then in the new upcoming catalog, there is the new well-suited twine combo pack that has some basic gray twine in it. I'm going to pull this out and just want to get a double length for tying a bow. And I'm just going to tie another bow over top of this bow. I love the baker's twine, and I'm so glad that we are getting it back. So we have this pack in the mini catalog that comes in basic gray and Night of Navy, I think that color is. And then there is another pack with, I think, Blushing Bride and Whisper White is back. So the white baker's twine is back. So that's exciting because I took it out of the last catalog, and it's so great for every project. That was just very frustrating that it was gone. So try to keep my hands out of the way so you can see this bow. But I'm just tying a smaller bow on top of the bigger bow. So just like that. Let's see if I can get this straight. Sometimes you just got to keep playing with the bows until they behave themselves. We'll trim up these ends too. I don't know why I keep saying edges. They're ends, not edges. And pull that down. And then we have just a fun little kind of double bow there. Now, I want to make sure that I put something inside this card. So I have a couple things I'm going to do. Let me open this up. Now, I wasn't real happy being able to see that ribbon. So what I did is I cut another piece of the designer series paper, and I'm not going to color this one. I'm just going to leave it gray and white. And it is 5 1/4 by 4 inches. Oops, I got a little bit too much glue on there. I'm just going to come in with my sponge and make sure I don't get that everywhere. So, and this I'm just going to put at the top. So the ribbon will show at the edges, but it just kind of gives it a finished appearance on the inside, makes it pretty. And then I have another piece of Whisper White that is also 5 1/4 by 4. And then I have a strip of designer series paper that also matches the front, and it is 5 1/4 by maybe an inch, 3/4 inch. I don't always pay attention. I sometimes just grab some scraps to do this. This is kind of my favorite little trick for decorating the inside of the card is just to grab some scraps of the designer series paper and throw it on a strip on the inside. So add some of that glue. And then this is going to go right inside the front. Just like that, right inside the card. So there you go. There's that finished card. Isn't that fun? So much fun. All right, let's move on to card number 2. Let me kind of push some stuff out of the way, and then we will start our second card. So for the second card, I'm going to be using some gray granite ink. So remember how I told you this paper uses both basic gray and gray granite. So I'm going to start with some gray granite ink, and I am actually going to stamp the kind of field of flowers, all of the parts that normally would be green. I'm going to stamp them with gray granite. A little bit odd, but I like the looks of this. It just kind of really, really pops. So try to keep my head out of the way, but still get that on there straight. We'll see how I did. So there's that gray granite field. And then there is a line of flowers, and we're going to stamp some Daffodil Delight flowers in this field. The flowers do not line up. Like I sat here and tried. They don't line up. You just want to stamp them kind of wherever. And doesn't that just pop? Those yellow flowers just pop on that gray. Give one more over here. So there's the yellow on the gray granite, and then we'll put that away. I'm going to grab that Always stamp again, and I'm going to grab the Basic Gray. So I'm combining Gray Granite and Basic Gray. And I'm going to stamp this Always right here kind of towards the top. So just like that. Now I have some tiny strips of Daffodil Delight. Normally when I stamp little greetings, I like to stamp the greeting first and then cut it out. But this time I really wanted a super straight strip that was really tight. And I decided that it was just easier to cut the paper first and then stamp the greeting. But I cut extras in case this goes wrong. Nope, perfect, beautiful. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my snips and I'm just going to snip off the end. And hopefully it's straight. So there we go. We'll set that aside. Now we can start assembling this card. So for this card, I have a Gray Granite base. This is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I have a piece of that pattern paper. This one is Gray Granite. On the back, you can see that pretty petal pink. I love this with petal pink too. But I love the way this gray is looking with the yellow. So this piece is 3.5 by 4 1/4. And again, all of these dimensions are available on my website, and the link to my website is in. Okay. Now I just noticed something. You saw me like pull that off real quick for a second. What I noticed is sometimes when you score your paper, it's not always even, right? And you can see, maybe you can't see, but I can see how the front is a little bit shorter. So normally what I do, because I didn't notice this till I'd already started putting the paper down, but normally what I would have done is I would have just flipped this over, and I like the front to be longer than the back. That way if it's sitting down, you can't tell, right? But since I missed that, I'm just gonna grab, this was our little guillotine cutter. This was never available for sale. It was only a join special for people who became demonstrators last year during Celebration, or people who are already demonstrators could purchase it in December, but otherwise it wasn't available. So that's really cool. I love it. I use it all the time. This year for our join special during Celebration, they are giving you an additional 5 packages of 6x6 designer series paper, and it's the color collection paper. So you know how they come in brights and subtles and regals, and there is 4 different patterns, and they come out every year with new patterns. So you're gonna get 5 of those if you join during January or February, and they are the patterns that are coming out in next year's catalog. So that's like an additional $50 bonus for joining during January, February. So if you're interested, the kit is always a fabulous deal, but this makes it even sweeter. So again, I put that on a piece of Basic Gray, and now I have that Basic Gray baker's twine again, and I'm just going to tie a little bow on the front here. I usually tie my bows before I cut off the string. That way, if it needs to be a little bit longer, I can make it a little bit longer. We'll see how I do with tying today. Tying tightly is always hit or miss with me. So there we go. And I'm just gonna get this tightened up. So when I pull the loops out, I hold the center to keep it nice and tight. And then I pull it tight again when I pull the loops longer, and just try to get it how I want it. So there we go. Nice little bow on there. And this is gonna go on the front of my card. Put some adhesive right down there. Now this, usually I like to hold this for a minute because it has that baker's twine on there, which means it's a little thick. So sometimes I would use Stampin' Dimensionals on this, but I didn't want this to get too dimensionally. So that means that I just kind of have to sit here and hold it for just a minute. So I'm going to try to hold it, or maybe sometimes what I will do is I will take blocks then I will set blocks on it just to hold it down, but that's not even, since that twine is so close to the edge, it's just not giving it the pressure it needs. That's okay. I'm just gonna, put my hand on it. And then that little piece of Daffodil Delight that I stamped, I'm gonna add some Stampin' Dimensionals to the back of it. Try to get those right towards the edge. This is a little bit tricky because if you get them sideways, they will be too wide, this is why I like to use the Take Your Pick tool, because I find it easier to get the dimensionals exactly where I want them. So I'll put those mini dimensionals away. Pull this off. Hopefully my card front is stuck well enough now. And then we are just going to take this and add this right here to the card front. So it just kind of overlaps a little bit onto the outside. There you go. There's the front. And again, I want to make the inside pretty too. So I'm just going to grab a little strip of Designer Series paper. And this time I'm going to add it all the way to this edge, to this outside edge right here. You can see where my fingers turned yellow. All right. And then again on the inside. And we'll just stick that right on the inside while I'm working on this card. So here is the finished card. Isn't that pretty? Love it. While I have the stamps out for this card, because this is what I want to use to decorate my envelopes, I'm just going to grab 3 envelopes. And I'm going to grab that gray granite ink again. Let me see. Let's do this on the back this time. Normally I like to do the front, but let's do the back this time. So we'll just stamp this on each of those 3 envelopes. Should have done this beforehand, but this is really easy when I have these stamps right here. And then we'll grab the Daffodil Delight and we'll just add in those flowers. Quick and easy. Way this time. So just a little field of wildflowers on the back of the envelopes too. So pretty. So that's the card number 2 and our envelope's ready to go. Let me set that aside. Okay, for card number 3, I'm going to go ahead and grab my Stamparatus because I'm going to do a little bit of embossing with the dye ink. So this means stamping things twice, so I want to grab the Stamparatus so that I can stamp things exactly twice. So I have a piece of Whisper White cardstock, and this is 2 1/16 by 3 3/16, and it has really weird dimensions because it is going to go in the center of this piece that I cut with those Stitch So Sweetly dies, which means that I had to kind of go with what dimensions were there. So that means you end up with really odd 16th inch dimensions. And then I'm going to grab the leaf part of the stamp first, the stem part, I should say. And I'm going to lay it where I want it. Now, normally you could put down some magnets to hold this piece of paper in place. What I am doing is I am just making sure I know which little quadrant it is lined up with. So get that back in there. Put this down. And now I'm going to ink up my stem, this time with some basic gray ink. Try to get that nice and inky. Make sure we're straight again. Oops. And this one doesn't matter so much. I'm just going to stamp that on the bottom. So there's the first part. Now I'm going to come in and I am going to go ahead. I'm going to grab one of the magnets off the back here. And I'm going to put the magnet down. I don't always use the magnets because even with the magnets, it sometimes tends to pull anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and put that magnet down. Let's see what we can do. And then I'm going to lay down the flowers where I want them. And I will grab these. And I'm going to ink them up, not with the basic gray. I'm going to ink those up with Daffodil Delight ink. And we'll stamp those right over the top. Now I'm going to clean off the Daffodil Delight ink. I use my Stampin' chamois to do this. And I'm going to ink this up with some Versamark ink so that I can emboss it with clear embossing powder. So grab my Versamark ink pad. I'm just going to ink this up again with Versamark ink. And then make sure this is where it kind of jumped a little bit. I can see that. So get that back. And I'll just stamp that right over top. And now we'll take this piece off and just set this aside. I have a piece of scrap paper I'm going to put this next to. And I'm just grabbing some clear embossing powder. We don't sell these giant tubs. I've had this for ages and ages, but you can just use clear embossing powder. I'm just going to dip that in and knock it off. Some people will take the smaller things and they will put it in a bigger tub so that they can do kind of that same. All right, so. And you can just see how that embossing powder turned that nice. I'm going to keep my heat gun right here. Turn that nice and shiny, and it just is helping it pop. Sometimes yellow, it has a hard time kind of standing on its own, right? It's hard to be the focus of the card. It gets overwhelmed. So I found that just doing that little bit of embossing really helped. Now I'm going to grab that same Always stamp. And I'm going to go ahead. So we don't have the embossing buddy anymore, but I'm still using mine because I want to make sure I get all that static off there. You can also use a little cornstarch and a little brush if you want. So I'm just going to ink up that Always stamp with Versamark ink. And I'm going to stamp it on some basic gray cardstock. And then I have this piece of scrap paper so that when I dump the white on, I can just tap it off onto this piece of scrap paper. Oh, and all of my, let's see, oh, here we go. So I have a few little strays. Just take a paintbrush and come in and snag those little strays. Get them out of there. So just like that, we'll dump all this Whisper White, or I guess just white, embossing powder back in the jar. Put the lid on. And then I will heat this with my heat tool. And that just turns a really nice bright white. So I'm going to use my You notice that this was just a scrap piece, right? So I'm going to use my my paper snips. Not everything is Stampin'. And I'm just going to very carefully kind of fussy cut this out. I'm leaving a nice amount of an edge. I don't even have to get super close inside of letters. I'm just kind of giving it a bubble effect. I always think about, when you're like a preteen, when you were 12, you were in junior high, and you would write something and then you would like turn it into a bubble word, right? You'd write a bubble around it. That's what I think about, but I'm doing it with my scissors instead of with another pen. So it does not have to be super close. And I'm just cutting those 3 dots right off. Those were too much of a hassle for me. They are just gone. So this just takes a minute. It's not too hard though, and it makes a really pretty effect. I got a little close there, but that's okay. Little imperfections. It's not perfectly the same width all the way around, but that's okay. Nobody is going to notice. So there's the always. Now let's start putting this card together. So I have a piece of Daffodil Delight cardstock, and this cardstock is 11. Whoops. I have stray bits of embossing powder on here. It is 11 by 4 1/4, and it's scored at 5 1/2. So it's going to be a top opening card, but the long way. So there's that. And then I have a piece of that same herringbone designer series paper, and this is 4 by 4. You can see another really pretty peony design on the inside. And I'm just going to adhere this to the front. I want my herringbones to go kind of left, right. So I'm going to kind of evenly off center. So all these cards, I kind of did kind of an off center thing with the designer series paper. I just think it looks kind of contemporary. So just like that. Then I have that piece that I cut on I cut this with the Stitch So Sweetly dies using my Big Shot. You could definitely use the new cut and emboss machine from Stampin' Up. I do not have it yet, but someday I will have it. So we'll just pop this right on the front. And then I'm going to use some of that baker's twine again. And this time I want to do a double bow all the way around. I really like double bows. Sometimes the baker's twine can look a little anemic, a little, it gets kind of lost, right? It's not heavy enough. So I find that doing a double strand really kind of helps with that. So yep, I think that's good. And I'm just going to tie this right over on the side. I think I got out too much ribbon this time, but that's okay. Oh, this is not. So double bows are always a little bit harder to keep track of all of those extra bows, but all the extra strings. So there we go. And I really want this to be a very small bow. So we're going to pull this in. We're going to pull this side in. Tighten it up again. So let's go ahead and trim the ends. And I might trim those again, but that's kind of a start. we go. So just a very teeny tiny bow right there. And then I want to take my Always, and I'm going to add some mini dimensionals to the back of it. You can see where I had embossed on the back of it already and messed up. That's fine. 2 sides to every piece of paper, right? So I just want to make sure this is well supported. So I'm putting some mini dimensionals in here wherever I can. And I am using quite a few, but these words, they like to kind of fall down. So I'm also going to take some regular size dimensionals. I'm going to put that on the back of this piece, my stamped image. And we're going to go ahead and put this right on my card. Oops. So this is going to go on my card front. Just like, sorry, just moving that up just a little bit. So just like this. Try to get that straight. And now I'm going to go ahead and take the dimension. I'm going to leave this dimensional right there because what we're going to do, oh, that is not, is that straight? I guess that is straight. Sometimes it's hard to tell. So we're going to put this in here and you'll notice that this dimensional, it needs more. So we're going to leave this dimensional right here on. We're going to take the rest of them off. All right, should have done this. I guess I should have done the one on the end first, but that's okay. We're going to take these off. Actually, I'm going to take this last one off too. And then this last one, I'm going to grab my dimensional sheet and I am going to stick a second one right on top. So it has twice the dimensionals. Then it just comes right up here. And that way it's pretty level all the way across. Now, one more little thing on this card front. I want to grab a little stamp. It says, "My friend." And we are going to stamp that right over here. So, always my friend. And on the inside of the card again, I have a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 inch cardstock, and I have a little strip of designer series paper. And we'll just add that right to the bottom. And then we'll add this piece to the inside. All right, so stick this on the inside, and this will be the end of my 3 cards for you today. So there's the inside of this card. Let me show you all 3 cards. Actually, I'm going to show you the sample that I worked from that I didn't emboss. See how I embossed this? Here's the one where I didn't emboss, and I feel like this embossing just helps that yellow stand out a little more and hold its own. It doesn't get quite so lost, and helps it be the focal point. So that's why I embossed it the second time around. So let's look at these 3 cards that I made. So here we go. Oops. If I find them all, I've kind of stuck them all over. Oh, here we go. So here's the 3 cards and then the envelopes to match. And that is all gonna be perfect for sending out to people. Thank you so much for sticking with me all the way to the end. Did you love those cards? I loved making them, and they're actually very easy to do. If you like this video, I hope that you like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And of course, come back again for more Stampin' tips, techniques, and ideas. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.